Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaVelas and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augmented Experience podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Joshua Velas. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down every week to talk about all the latest news in the technology, business, and video game world. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velas. I'm your host as usual, and obviously welcome back to the show. Today's episode 232 of the show, and well, let's get on with the house cleaning because you guys are probably like, okay, bud, what the heck? Like, this episode is coming out not at the time that I normally do these episodes, and that's the whole point of we're doing house cleaning. But first, as I want to state this, thank you guys for coming back and listening. I really do appreciate it. You guys constantly take time in your days to download these episodes, to share these episodes, to constantly keep letting me know how you feel, whether you like my stupid opinions or not. At the end of the day, it's greatly appreciated. And whether you're watching the video version here on YouTube or you like listening to the audio version on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to listen to your podcast, I greatly appreciate it at the end of the day. But I also do want to elaborate why this episode is coming out on Friday and not Wednesday like we normally do. And it mainly came down to the fact that a lot of stuff happened this week. This was a much busier week due to homework, a lot of homework. I had a lot of exams. I had interviews because this was the job fair this week. So yeah, I was definitely a lot busier, even though the news has still been cranking out like crazy. Like, there's so much news, and obviously we have news for weeks, just being honest with you right now. But it definitely has been a bit busy, but I thank you guys for being patient with me. And I really hope you enjoyed today's episode, because today's episode, we are talking about some of these new pieces of news that are coming out, which we're going to be talking about the AMD 7000 series. And this is where, after seeing a lot of reviews, after seeing a lot of commentary from retailers, after seeing commentary from people interested in buying these products, yeah, there's going to be some issues and some concerns, and we're going to talk about those here today. So what exactly are we in for when it comes to the AMD 7000 series? And when it comes to the Ryzen 7000 series in this case, because it's better just calling it Ryzen instead of AMD, even though it's the same thing. But the 7000 series Ryzen chips, the main thing that sticks out like a sore thumb is that the thermal performance is very concerning. They clearly are running a lot hotter than they normally would, and it's like, some people are kind of worried. Some people are like, okay, what do we do? This is like, these things are running a lot hot, because their normal operating temperature is about 95 degrees Celsius, and for some people that's like, yeah, that's a bit wee hot, don't you think? Because obviously Intel chips, for people that are familiar with building with AMD chips in their system, yeah, they run hot normally, and that's why you have to get really nice coolers. And people are more comfortable buying, like, say, really good coolers that were not terribly expensive for the AMD chips, because yeah, they would obviously still run decently hot, but not like to the point where we're pushing over 80 degrees and stuff like that. Like, I currently in my system am using a 5900X, and I'm using that should be the P120 Peerless Assassin from Thermaltake, or Thermalright. Yeah, that cooler is incredible. I'm running my processor. I can see my temps right here in front of me. I'm like, what am I running at? Like, I'm checking my temps right now. It says my CPU is running at like 42 degrees right now, because obviously I'm doing all this encoding and stuff on my computer and a bunch of tabs open and stuff like that. But you get my point, is that it's running a lot cooler. And this is one of the main issues people are having with the 7000 series Ryzen chips, is that they naturally run hotter. And it's not just the flagship 7950X or the 7900X. It's even in the 7700X and the 7600X. So some people are like, okay, are we getting a lot more performance though? And this is where, AMD has made some commentary regarding this to a lot of reviewers. If you've been keeping up with the news and watching reviews about these products, clearly I'm not doing reviews for them. I'm just simply here to provide commentary and keep you informed about all the latest news going on with this stuff, because that's really my job. But when it comes to seeing a lot of the commentary, yes, we're seeing this at the retail stores, at the retail level, where people are going into Micro Centers and Best Buys. And well, people are avoiding the CPUs because they don't like that they run so hot. Like, it's kind of almost like that. It's that response that they give just to like, hey, obviously the sales reps were like, hey, we just got the 7000 series in. Would you be interested in maybe upgrading your system? Or like, obviously they're going to try to sell it to you. And a lot of those people try to deflect and be like, well, I just don't like how hot they run. And then they just, go on their day. And a lot of retailers are starting noticing that, hey, it's kind of a bit of a harder sell, especially because people have seen, like, people that go inside of a Micro Center are clearly more educated customers in this case. That's the whole point, the vibe that you get at Micro Center is that these are people that shop there, that know what they're looking for, that are just looking to make sure that they have it, or like, hey, maybe if there's another option, they can talk to somebody that's experienced because the people at Micro Center are well informed. Obviously they have their own biases and things like that, but at least they're informed to help you make the right decision for you. And in this case, some of those people don't even want to listen to that because they've seen the thermal performance of these new chips and they're like, it's a bit rough. And that's only part of the problem. That's not even all of the problem, because the thermal performance, yes, they do run hot. Now, AMD says that this is normal, that this is what they intended, that long-term performance will still be good. Some people are still worried because then it also depends on the quality of your cooler and how much money you have to spend on it and stuff like that. So you're starting to see a little bit of an overarching theme here where cost is being mentioned a decent amount. And this is the second issue with this whole problem, is the fact that the chips are expensive. The fact that the 7600X starts at $300, the fact that I say that the 7700X is in that good sweet spot, that good price range. Obviously the high end, the 7950X, that's the one that's like $700 plus. It's like, it's like, it's a flagship CPU. And yes, in terms of multi-core, in terms of production workflows, yes, that's who this chip is designed for. It's designed for that high intensive multimedia creation, like obviously it can do gaming, but it's also designed to do heavy productivity loads, whether it be code compiling, video editing, photo editing, things like that. Here's the problem though. The price is a little bit high, and it's not just with the CPUs. Like the entry-level CPU, the 7600X, yes, for gaming, it's going to be great. It performs incredibly well. There's some caveats, which we're going to also mention a little bit later, but we're talking about cost right now. The overall cost of adoption is very steep right now. That's just the reality here, is that the current motherboards, the X670 boards and the X670E boards, like the more high-end boards, yeah, they're not cheap. They're starting at around, they say like technically the cheapest should be like around $250, $280, but people are saying like the average range for a good board is like $300, and that's like, yeah, that's a lot of money. Like when I built my X570 board, like, my the Asus Tough gaming Wi-Fi, like when I bought that one, that board was like 180, 190. So like, it's a nicer board. It's definitely on a little bit of the, higher end, if you want to say that. It's clearly not a high-end board. It's more of a mid-tier board, more like entry-level X570, but still good performance, good VRMs, good, all that jazz. But the fact that a lot of the boards are starting at that more $250, almost $300 plus range, yeah, it makes the adoption of the system very expensive. And here's the other problem too, is the RAM. DDR5 is still not cheap. It's still not affordable. As much as you try to argue it, it's not. Like, yes, it has gone down tremendously in price. It's still not at the point where, say, high quality DDR4 is right now, which high quality DDR4 sits around that $200 range. And for these Ryzen chips, based on testing, yeah, you do want some higher quality RAM, and that's obviously not cheap. You're going to spend a good amount of money. And then on top of all this stuff, the processors are expensive to begin with. So it's a steep investment. This is one of the reasons why I didn't want to buy into the 7000 series, even though they're like, why don't you just wait, man? You have a 3900X. Why jump up to the 5000 series, bro? Just, wait to the 7000. I'm like, bro, I understand where you're coming from. I know the performance gains are going to be better. However, the cost for adopting into that new system is too steep because I have to get a whole new motherboard. I have to buy the new processor. I have to buy new RAM. Like, the price to invest is so steep. Like, think about it. The upgrades for my PC, for my CL14 3600 32 gigabyte kit of RAM and my 5900X and a new cooler were still cheaper than buying a 7900X. Like, yeah, you get what I'm saying. It's like, it was cheaper to buy all three of those components than buying a new processor. Like, it's important, guys. Like, you have to be mindful of this stuff. Like, and that's another big problem too, is like the fact that they're so expensive. And then you see like the 5000 series is they're still incredible performers. Like, you can still buy into the system. You can get it for fairly cheap. And to be honest, it's probably what people really should be going towards if you want a more affordable build, because they still give great performance and the system still has good options. Like, you have the 5600X, you have the 5900X, you have the 5950X if you want the big 16 core. If you want just pure gaming, get the 5800 X3D, which is like the gaming chip. We're going to talk about that when we talk about performance games. That's another big issue people have. And keep in mind here, all of these issues are all just AMD right now. We are not including the other shark across the pond, which is Intel. And Intel has already shown they're going to be much more aggressive with their pricing. And if their performance claims are to believe, big asterisks right next to it, yes, the fact that it is much cheaper and it could probably run cooler because of the whole thermal limitations that they're doing. Yeah, we're starting to see people might switch, even though there's also drawbacks, but we'll talk about that pretty shortly. So, actually, why shortly? Let's talk about that right now. Performance. We've seen reviews. People have seen the reviews going out from Hardware Unboxed and different outlets and things like that. And yeah, the 7950X performs incredible. It's steamrolling a lot of the competition. However, it still sometimes fall behind the i9-12900K. And in some instances, it still performs worse than the 5800 X3D because of all that V-cache. Because that's what a lot of video games require, is just more V-cache. And in the case of the X3D, it's got a lot of it. So the fact that it's still going to perform very well in just gaming applications, it's a bit worrisome that people are spending this much money and adopting in a new system and things like that. And it's like, it's still struggling to beat last generation's chip. Like, and this is where it also comes into play when we talk about Intel, because Intel at the time of this recording has already announced the Raptor Lake, or the 13th gen, and the performance is looking really good. And the fact that it's also cheaper, and the fact that some of these features that they're talking about, like limiting the thermal watt, like you can lower the wattage to like 65 watts, and in theory, the i9 13900K is able to perform similar, if not greater, than an i9-12900K operating at full wattage. Like, that is really good performance if it is true. Granted, we have to see third-party reviews and things like that, but if these claims are true, and the fact that they can run at lower wattages, that means they can run cooler, and it's like, you start to see. And another big selling point too, with the new Intel series, the fact that you could still use DDR4, and a lot of people, they'd rather take that performance cut if it means they get to still use their RAM that they have available to them. Like, they're good kits of DDR4 RAM that they've already bought. They don't have to worry about buying DDR5. Now, are there drawbacks buying into the 13th gen? Yes, some of those drawbacks include this will be the last time this chip, this series of chip will be needed, because obviously you can still use a 13 series chip on a Z690, or yeah, basically you can still use them on the 12th gen motherboards. That's the whole point. You can still use them because of the same, processing die and things like that. But in this case, you're technically buying into a dead platform, because after this generation you can't upgrade. And some people make the commentary when it comes to the AM5 platform, the fact that it will support multiple generations of chips. And this is where it gets into this debate about you're essentially buying into the system. And I guess this is what smart consumers should always do. Never buy something because of promises of future support. Always buy a product because of what it does now, and only talk about the current realities, not focus on maybe, if they do this in a software update, or maybe if they do this feature. Because clearly, AMD has broken their promises before. They didn't want to put 5000 series on B450 motherboards, or they didn't want to support it. And they got a lot of pushback, and then they got to reel it all back and like, okay, fine, we'll put 5000 series on these new boards and stuff like that. And it's like, you see what I mean? Like, AMD is capable of breaking promises. No company is your best friend. We've talked about this multiple times. These companies view you as dollar signs. They do not care about you. It's nothing personal. It's just, you are the bottom line at the end of the day. You are the one that's making the money. They clearly want you to buy into their products. And if they can find ways to get you to buy their newest stuff, they will do it in a heartbeat. They will. You don't believe me? Ask Apple. Well, yeah, ask them. They're pretty good at it. But these are part of the problems that people are having with the 7000 series. Cost, thermals, the competition. These three factors are brewing a recipe that AMD is starting to become a little bit too, I'd say, too high on their horse right now. They're starting to feel good. They're like, hey, we're taking a lot of market share right now. Our competition's messing up, so we can maybe take it a bit easy and maybe be a little bit more, not as aggressive of pricing, but focus more on that high end. And then their competition is starting to say, hey, we'll still compete at the high end, but we'll also focus on these more affordable options because we know that people don't want to just always buy the latest and greatest. That's just a small minority of a market. That's just the reality of it, is like, you can't expect everyone to just buy all high end because that's not realistic. The majority of your buyers are going to be in that mid to budget range options, primarily the budget range, because if they can get good performance for as low as cost as possible, people will go for that. That's what people naturally do. Like, yes, you'll have those people that will spend the big money on the more expensive, more premium, more higher performance and things like that. You will have those buyers. They are there, but they're also a small minority. They're very vocal, but they're still a minority at the end of the day. The majority is going to be the budget buyers. And the fact that Intel is giving those budget buyers good performance at an affordable cost, good thermals, like, you start to see how it becomes more enticing. And every system has its pros and cons. Building all AMD, building all Intel, we're not even focusing on NVIDIA right now because that's a whole different ballgame to deal with. But you get my point. Right now, the whole debacle with the AMD 7000 series, or the Ryzen 7000 series in this case, is that yes, people are worried about these thermals. And this is something that we're going to have to test in a more long-term period, because obviously we can see these in benchmarks and things like that, like couple days, couple weeks. We need to see how these things perform in a longer period of time. Like, is this thermal performance, like, obviously operating at constant 95 degrees Celsius and things like that? I wouldn't even say constant, but whenever it's doing something intensive and things like that, it will kick up that high. And depending on the quality of your cooler, will this damage the processor, maybe damage your board later down the line? And these are things that we have to see, that comes with months, with maybe a year of it testing and experience. Like, we have to start seeing this thing. Maybe companies will start having to make better coolers just to cool these damn things. Like, it's a toss-up. These are things that we're gonna have to see over time. And yes, maybe another thing too is the cost. Is it worth buying into it now, or should we wait? Because people have talked about sorry, oof. That's how you know, like, I'm a little bit tired from my interviews, man. Just my voice is like slightly dying on me. But that's just the reality of it, guys. Like, being straight with you, these chips are gonna get cheaper. They will. Like, the fact that Intel launched the 13th gen much cheaper, I'm not gonna be surprised if we start seeing price cuts by the winter. I'm not gonna be surprised when we see the 3D cache of the 7000 series come out, that we start seeing price reductions. Like, we're gonna start seeing some aggressive price reductions. I promise you, we will. It's just the motherboard pricing and all the other, like, the platform and the whole buying process in itself is very expensive. And that's concerning. Like, some people don't wanna buy into the long term. They just want to see what they can get now. And for a lot of people, to be honest, I think investing in the 5000 series is still a good jump. Like, if you're on a 2000 series, if you're on the 1000 series, like, heck, maybe you're coming from like a 10th gen system of Intel or 11th gen or something, upgrading to a 5900X, 5950X, or even the 5800X 3D, which is, if you're just doing gaming, that's really what you should be going for. And buying a nice, like, more affordable X570 board, nice B550, and like a good kit of CL14, CL16, 3600 RAM, you're gonna get a lot of great performance for a long period of time for not that much money. And like, obviously it's still gonna be a good amount of money, but it's not gonna be as expensive in comparison to, say, building a brand new 7000 series system. But you get my point. At the end of the day, I think the 5000 series, going down in price and things like that and still being available, I think a lot of people benefit just going for the 5000 series, to be honest. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Are you happy with AMD at this point because of these, reviews coming out for the new processors? Are you happy about the performance gains? Because let's be real, the performance gains are good, but the fact that they still struggle to beat even the 5800X 3D is kind of compelling, especially because it's cheaper. And obviously, yes, when we're talking about professional workloads, that's different. But if we're just talking straight gaming, it's kind of hard to say the 5800 X3D or even an i9 12900K is not a good option, you know? Like, yeah, it's still, you know, it's going to be a dead platform soon, or not soon, but you know, if you're not upgrading every single year, it's not really that big of an issue. If you upgrade like every 5 years, then to be honest, you can buy into it and you'll get all the performance you want out of it for more than that. But at the end of the day, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Again, I do want to apologize because the fact that this episode is coming out at non-traditional times because it's coming on a Friday instead of a Wednesday. But hey, it's been a busy week, and I know for me, you guys know how important school is, especially because I'm about to graduate. So it's like, yeah, I got to put a lot of focus on this stuff, and that's just the reality of it. But I'm grateful that you guys are patient with me. I'm glad that you guys understand where I'm coming from, and you know, you're willing to work with me and you keep coming back and listening, and I greatly appreciate it. But I hope you guys have yourselves a wonderful week and weekend. I know for those of you that are in Dallas or in Texas, the State Fair of Texas opens up the time this episode goes live, so it's gonna be a very fun time. I'm gonna go enjoy it with my friends this weekend. We're gonna have a great time. And I hope you guys just enjoy your weekend. Try to be safe. Don't do anything stupid. You know, continue to be kind and courteous to those around you, because the world is still a weird place, guys. That's just the reality of things. The world is still weird, and if we can just, you know, do our part to treat others the way they're supposed to be treated, in time, maybe the world could be better. But for now, just do what we can do and focus on us, you know? But I love you guys to death. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye, guys. Hey there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and listening to today's episode. If you're interested in supporting the show, whether it be financially, clicking the follow button, or just sharing the episode, it all works for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I love you guys to death.